Discover the incredible moment an atheist scientist encountered Jesus, the amazing transformation. Dr. Emily Carter could never have imagined how closely tied her scientific world was to the fragile threads of faith until the cold weight of fear landed like lead in her stomach. The sterile white walls of her lab felt like a cage. The hum of machinery, a constant reminder of the distance between her life and the one cared for by her grandmother's unwavering prayers. She had spent her life retreating into equations, embracing the certainty of physics while ignoring the rumbles of uncertainty in her heart. Yet, as she stared at the brightly lit screen before her, filled with infallible data on her mother's health, a chasm of doubt began to creep in. Skepticism was her armor. Raised by a single mother, she learned to rely on logic and her own strength. Emotions were for the weak. Yet, deep down, pain curled like a vine around her thoughts. The hospital call had jolted her out of her scientific cocoon, the voice on the other end rattling her carefully constructed world. Desperation gnawed at her resolve. How far could she trust the tangible, the measurable, when all she wanted was a hint of divine intervention? Before she could plan her next steps, she found herself across from Pastor Tom in his modest office, cluttered with family photos and an inviting aroma of homemade pie wafting through the air. "Faith can be a foundation," he said, his warm smile a stark contrast to her chilly logic. Emily resisted the urge to scoff. Here was a man of God who should but didn't he intimidate her. To him, science and faith were friends, not foes. But to her, the very thought made her stomach twist. Could this comforting faith ever coexist with her all-consuming artillery of proof? She felt the rubble of her skepticism shift beneath her footing as the days stretched on and her mother's condition worsened. Emily faced not only the dread of losing the one person who understood her, but also the betrayal she never saw coming. A colleague, a serpent hidden in the grass, undermined her pivotal research, intentionally undercutting her tenure aspirations. It felt like a double blow, her heart and career both gasping for air. She questioned everything, her path blurring in a tempest of anger and disappointment. The very laws she had revered felt trivial against the enormity of her grief, her weighty past pressing down on her conscience. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. That storm swirling within her. The chaos paused for just a moment as an extraordinary experience washed over her, an undefined moment, as clear as it was unsettling. A fleeting encounter that could only be described as supernatural. Was he real, or merely a figment conjured by her desperate mind? The gentle brush against her consciousness left her grappling with a question that could no longer be avoided. What if shared understanding could ignite a new path? And yet, what would that mean for her career as a physicist? As she prepared for her public lecture, where she was meant to reveal advancements in her research, that fleeting experience resided on the edge of her thoughts, unsettling the foundation of her beliefs. The podium loomed before her, a battleground where science would clash with the whispers of faith that dared to emerge from her heart. In that moment, she felt unbearably small, shoulders heavy with doubt and the weight of an unresolved tension, as a familiar shadow appeared among the audience. As her mind raced, she wondered if this would solidify her beliefs or push her further into despair. The microphone seemed to magnify her indecision. Would she embrace the unexpected turning of her faith, or cling to the cold comfort of rigid scientific claims? Anxiety coiled tighter, and the moment hung in the balance, unyielding, pushing her toward an abyss of unknowing. The lights dimmed as the audience settled, the rustle of papers and whispered conversations fading into an anxious silence. Dr. Emily Carter felt the weight of their collective gaze pressing into her skin multifaceted expectations tangling with her own. She could almost hear her heartbeat drown out the sound of her own thoughts, a primal reminder of her vulnerabilities. This wasn't just another lecture. It was a revelation. She stepped forward, and with her hand trembling slightly, she reached for the microphone. Her palms were slick with sweat, and the world around her seemed to blur. In that moment of utter vulnerability, doubt crept in like an unwelcome guest. What if she faltered? What if her findings fell flat under the scrutiny of her peers, especially that colleague who had taken such pleasure in her recent setbacks? As she began to speak, her rehearsed words felt distant. Today I will discuss. The sentence found its way out, but the thoughts that followed cascaded. Each point of data, each groundbreaking statistic paled in comparison to the existential questions clawing at her insides. In her mind, Pastor Tom's words echoed, urging her to find common ground between her science and the flickering ember of faith ignited within her. Moments passed as she shared her research with practiced precision. But as she progressed, she felt that dim encounter hovering just beyond the reach of rational explanation. It nagged at her, twisting her perspective as she spoke, exposing a deeper yearning beneath the certainty of scientific principles. What if there was an unseen force at play, a truth that stretched beyond her lab as fluorescent lights? The atmosphere in the auditorium shifted when she mentioned the implications of her research. She cited data, images flickering behind her, as she passionately described how her work could change lives, how the intersection of science and compassion could guide new treatment pathways. But she knew there was something more beneath these discoveries, a pulse of humanity intertwined with analytical rigor. She felt lighter, almost buoyant, as she spoke of hope nestled amidst numbers. Yet, there was a pang of anxiety in her stomach as she happened to lock eyes with her colleague in the back, a smirk plastered on his face. He was a constant reminder of her professional inadequacies, but in this moment, as she brought her speech towards a close, the resolve rising within her pushed away the shadows. The confrontation was inevitable. He would not let her thrive without a fight. "I believe there is power," Emily asserted, a fire igniting in her eyes, not just in what we measure and observe, but in the connections we make and the compassion that drives us. Her voice broke slightly, laden with urgency. The world is not just composed of equations and theories. It is shrouded in the human experience, and therein lies a truth we must address. The audience stirred, their faces a mix of surprise and intrigue. The space that had once felt suffocating expanded with her words. Each heartbeat synchronized with an awakening of understanding, both within her and among them. Stepping into the unknown, she embraced a budding exploration of faith's inclusion in her narrative. She finished. Applause erupted, yet a potent realization washed over her. She had planted a seed within herself. The path ahead was no longer one-dimensional. However, with this clarity came a weighty question: how to navigate the complexities of her scientific career while fostering this new perspective of faith. One thing was certain: she would not cower in the face of challenge. Emily felt a fierce determination rise, a sense of empowerment spurred on by her own vulnerability. As the audience's applause began to fade, she met her colleague's gaze one last time, a challenge shimmering in the tension. The moment had arrived to confront the conflict, to face the doubts that plagued her. But the questions lingered. Would this newfound coupling of her identities endanger her career, or could it lead her towards a breakthrough far greater than statistical validation? The stage was set for a new chapter, one that demanded she confront her beliefs, faith, and nascent doubts amidst opponent pressures. Where would this journey take her next? Emily stepped off the stage, still buzzing with the adrenaline of the lecture. The applause echoed in her ears, but the lingering weight of her colleagues' condescending expression gnawed at her mind. As she gathered her notes, she felt the pulse of uncertainty return, reminding her that acceptance from some would come at a price. In the days following her talk, the university buzzed with mixed reactions. Colleagues approached her privately, some with praise, others cloaked in skepticism. Her phone buzzed incessantly with messages. Colleagues who expressed admiration, a few who questioned her integrity. Each response felt like a test she knew she had to navigate, carefully balancing her newfound perspective with the rigid expectations of her profession. One evening, after an exhausting day of conciliatory meetings, Emily found herself sitting on her couch, staring out the window at the darkening sky. She craved tranquility, but felt an unsettling urgency simmering beneath the surface, a wish to explore the deeper layers of her identity further. Pastor Tom's words flickered in her mind, whispered like a gentle nudge urging her forward. The next morning, she sat at her desk and glanced at the array of research papers spread out around her. The data whispered promises of revolutionizing treatment pathways, yet an undercurrent of something more profound ached for attention. She opened her laptop and began to type, not just about statistics and scientific findings, but about the human spirit entwined in her research. The words flowed, stories of patients transformed by compassion, narratives that fueled her desire for a more profound connection between science and humanity. But every keystroke brought a fresh wave of doubt. Would her colleagues respect her work if they learned of her spiritual exploration? Would that same skepticism fester into judgment? In that moment, she recalled her lecture, how the connection between science and compassion resonated in the auditorium. What had she felt? Empowered? Undoubtedly. Convinced that this was a path worth pursuing? Absolutely. Determined, she devised a plan. She would venture into interdisciplinary research that explored faith's impact on health outcomes, a synthesis of her scientific expertise and personal beliefs. This could become a pioneering study, perhaps even the evidence that challenged the rigid dichotomy of faith and science. However, she no longer would she be operating in the shadows of skepticism. Confronting her colleague would not be optional. It was essential. The man who had belittled her without hesitation in the past might also threaten her future. The stakes had transformed drastically. It wasn't merely about her career, but about her very self, the merging of science with newfound values. Emily picked up her phone, her finger hovering over his name. Her heart raced, apprehension and anticipation intertwining. Would he dismiss her idea? Would he see this as another opportunity to undermine her? Or could he be persuaded to consider the integration of faith into their work? Drawing a deep breath, she pushed the button to call him, feeling the rush of self-assertion drown out the doubt. The call rang, and the wait felt interminable. She mentally rehearsed her words. I believe we need to talk about my proposal for our next project. I have an important perspective. Before she could finish her thought, she heard his voice on the line, imbued with a calm confidence that sent shivers down her spine. As she engaged him in conversation, the stakes rose higher than ever before. The tension tightened like a noose, and Emily realized that this confrontation could indeed reshape her destiny, illuminating paths she had yet to envision. The moment to redefine her professional journey was dawning, but the question remained: would she secure compassion's rightful place in scientific inquiry, or would the fear of rejection hold her back once again? Emily could feel the weight of her colleague's presence even over the phone. His tone was clipped, the kind that clawed at her insides. Emily, what is it you want to discuss? His impatience was palpable, a stark reminder of his lingering disdain for her recent lecture. I want to propose a collaborative project, she began, every word a careful step on fragile ground. A collaboration? He echoed, skepticism dripping from his voice. On what exactly? On the intersection of faith and health outcomes. I believe examining how spiritual beliefs can influence patient recovery could yield groundbreaking insights. Silence filled the line like a heavy fog. She could almost hear the cogs of his mind turning. Would he see her vision or mock her ambition? You can't be serious, he finally said, and in his dismissal, she felt the sting of her vulnerability. The self-assuredness she had summoned now wavered. I am serious, Emily responded, resolve tinged with urgency. I understand this is unorthodox, but the data suggests that belief systems have significant effects on health outcomes. It's worth exploring, and it could position our department as pioneers in an entirely new approach to medicine. Pioneers? He scoffed. We're just throwing insights from pseudoscience into a serious field. His words sliced through her. She swallowed hard against the wave of self-doubt. Did he not realize the critique she faced every day? Here she was, speaking her truth, and he was ready to dismantle it with one sweeping statement. Could this be the moment to stand her ground? Is your skepticism rooted in the data or your belief about spirituality? She challenged, her pulse quickening. Another pause. You really think you can combine faith and science through data collection? He asked, his tone now oddly probing. It's an experiment destined to fail unless you can solidify an evidence base. I already have preliminary data. She replied, heart racing. I've noticed correlations in patients who reported strong spiritual beliefs and their overall health outcomes. People in various faith communities often have stronger support systems, which explains some of these results. His response came slowly, weighing her words. What you need is a solid methodology. Do you have an approach you could see through? Because if you're just proposing this from emotion— No, she interjected. I want robust methodologies. I'm ready to put in the work, gather data across disciplines. I can outline a full proposal. She could almost sense him reevaluating her. She had broken through his skepticism, but just barely. If you can prepare an outline that accurately addresses both objections and methodologies, I'll entertain the idea. But know that I'll scrutinize every nook and cranny, he warned. Your career is already teetering on the edge. Don't risk it further without a strong case. His final words hung in the air like a trap. It was a chance for validation, yet the pressure to prove herself weighed heavily. She had cracked the exterior of disbelief, but would that be enough to convince an entire institution? Thank you, she said, holding the phone tightly as if it would anchor her spirit. A thought flickered as the conversation closed. Could this project be more than academic? Could it breathe life into her values, her mission? As Emily hung up, nerves surged through her chest. The task ahead loomed, a mountain of research shrouded in uncertainty. The line she had drawn between faith and science blurred, with each passing moment feeling like both a call to arms and a precipice of disaster. Determined not to falter, she began drafting her proposal, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The vision was becoming clearer, but a gnawing concern lingered. How would the rest of her colleagues react? Innovation rarely birthed without resistance. The horizon of her research was vast, threading together the intricate complexities of human existence. But in pursuit of intermingling faith and science, would she ultimately discover clarity, or would old doubts resurface, shattering her resolve? As she paused to reflect on her next steps, the tension churned within her, a tantalizing question unfurling in her mind. Was she ready to confront the academic world that had judged her? The time had come for Emily to inspire transformation not just in her research, but in her profession as a whole. What would she find in the crucible of doubt and discovery? Emily sat in her small office, papers scattered across the desk, each one a potential piece of the puzzle that could define her career. The weight of doubt pressed against her chest like an iron shackle. She had just extended a fragile bridge over a chasm of skepticism, but now it threatened to collapse beneath her. Her colleague's critique echoed in her mind, igniting a fire of determination that mingled with her insecurities. She took a deep breath, forcing her gaze back to the computer screen. The blinking cursor awaited her next move, and with it came the realization that she was at a crossroads. This was bigger than just a research proposal. This was a chance to forge a path between two worlds she had long thought incompatible. How could she ground her ideas in empirical evidence, while retaining the essence of human experience that faith encompassed? The task loomed like a storm cloud, darkening her thoughts, but beneath the turbulence was an undercurrent of excitement. Emily had always thrived in uncertainty. It was where her ideas sparked, where she had once been that bold researcher pushing boundaries. Yet with the cacophony of fear swirling in her mind, it was hard to remember that spark. She initiated her outline, focusing on methodologies that would anchor her research in data rather than speculation. She pored over existing studies, tangling her ideas with established frameworks designed for sociology and psychology, consolidating a method that intertwined patient interviews with statistical analysis. The creativity flowed like a river, each current capturing her belief in the project's potential. But with each new section, inner voices rose to challenge her. Would her colleagues really embrace this approach? Would they dismiss her as a mere dreamer in a world of data-driven pragmatism? They had long drilled her with the importance of maintaining scientific integrity, often deriding anything that ventured too close to the spiritual. Do it for them, she repeated softly to herself, attempting to summon the conviction she felt for her cause. This was not only about her. It was about patients whose experiences and beliefs mattered. As the hours dripped by, she realized she was not just compiling research. She was building an argument for change, for a new way of thinking about health, for an intersection where the scientific and the spiritual could coexist. With the stakes so high, her resolve took shape. Throughout the development of the proposal, she found strength in her knowledge, in the very evidence that could illuminate the path forward. The idea began to crystallize. Emily pictured her proposal viewed on the desks of her colleagues, most of whom had remained entrenched in rigid scientific paradigms. The image sparked another wave of anxiety. What if they rallied against her? What if she found herself standing alone, surrounded by walls of rejection? Yet, rather than retreating into her doubts, she began to structure her defense. She could foresee counterarguments. She would prepare her proposal to blunt the edge of criticism with facts, source studies, and potentially even a pilot project to showcase the findings. Hours later, with her outline nearly complete, a new thought settled in her mind. Maybe she could invite feedback from a select few trusted colleagues who had an open mind. A smaller group could mitigate the risk of total critique while also bolstering her confidence through their support. Determined, she saved her document, her heart pounding with both fear and anticipation. Would they support her journey or trap her fears in a feedback loop of skepticism? Tomorrow would reveal all, and with it, she found herself standing at a precipice once more. With her thoughts racing, she reflected on the metamorphosis ahead. This was not just a project proposal, it was a defining moment of her professional integrity and personal belief. The time had come for Emily to navigate the treacherous terrain of academic acceptance. She knew the next steps could either propel her into uncharted territory or land her firmly entrenched in the safety of convention once more. Would she have the courage to embrace the unknown and face the collective judgment awaiting her? As the night deepened, Emily realized that regardless of the outcome, the confrontation was inevitable. It was time to face not only the scrutiny of her colleagues, but also the doubts within. What awaited her in the realm between faith and science? The only way out was through a courageous unveiling, a willingness to stand tall, even if her ideas fell flat. At dawn's first light, the call to action would echo loudly. Was she truly ready to make that stand, or would she falter once more under the weight of expectation? Emily awoke before sunrise, a sense of purpose coursing through her veins alongside the remaining tendrils of anxiety. The shadows in her office morphed into tangible reminders of the challenges confronting her. Today was the day she would either step into the unknown or retreat into familiar obscurity. As she prepared for the meeting, the tension radiating from her core coalesced into a burning need to share her findings, to advocate for the patients whose voices often went unheard. The drive to the university was punctuated by the rhythmic thrum of the engine that matched her heartbeat, a metronome marking time until she faced her colleagues. Each stoplight felt like a countdown to impending judgment, and with every red light, her confidence waned slightly more, as if the heaviness of expectation beckoned her to reconsider. What if they dissected her proposal like a specimen, exposing every flaw to the light of day? Parking her car, she allowed herself to breathe deeply, embracing the silence of the early morning. If this was going to be a battle, she needed to be armed not only with data, but with conviction her authentic beliefs. With a determined exhale, Emily resolved to articulate her passion as clearly as the evidence supporting her research. She entered the conference room. A swell of voices greeted her, laughter intertwining with the clinking of coffee cups. Each warm interaction felt heavy with judgment. She scanned the faces of her colleagues, some friendly, others arching brows and skepticism. Taking her seat, she felt a palpable inequality between her and the pulpit of established scholars. But she knew this was a necessary confrontation, the defining clash between her and the confines of traditional thought. "Thank you, everyone, for being here today," she began, her voice steady yet intimate. "I've spent countless hours considering our Field S approach to mental and physical health, and I believe there is an opportunity for a transformative dialogue between our evidence-based practices and the spiritual dimensions of patient experience." As she delved into her presentation, her hand gesturing toward the slides, Emily felt a shift. She explained her methodologies, citing studies that connected spiritual health with improved patient outcomes. Images and graphs filled the room, but it was her narrative thread, the stories of patients who had experienced profound healing through faith, that resonated. She sensed the reluctance in the room slowly dissolving, at least for a few. However, the moment did not lack its detractors. John, a seasoned researcher with a reputation for his unyielding realism, spoke up. "Emily, with all due respect, how do you define these spiritual experiences? They seem subjective and unmeasurable in a clinical sense." The challenge landed like a pebble in a calm pool, sending ripples of uncertainty through her. "Concepts of spirituality are indeed harder to quantify," she replied, steeling her resolve. "But that does not render them irrelevant. We cannot ignore the human experience in favor of purely empirical data. I'm proposing a model that captures both quantitative data and qualitative insights." The room was taut with anticipation, a tangible reminder of the chasm she attempted to bridge. Emboldened, Emily countered every question with passion, a fire ignited not only by the need to prove herself, but by the belief in the patients she fought for. She discovered unexpected layers to her own expertise as she navigated each objection. This moment was more than defending a proposal. It was an affirmation of her values and a push against the systemic rigidities she faced. As she concluded her presentation, there was a moment of silence that stretched out like an eternity. Had she been convincing? Was she ready to face the inevitable critiques that awaited her? The weight of expectations settled back on her shoulders, heavier than before. The meeting adjourned, and while some colleagues approached her with questions and supportive comments, she noticed John lingering at the back. His expression hinted at forthcoming rebuttal. As she gathered her materials, Emily felt the familiar flutter of nerves. Would this conversation lead to further validation or another sharp critique that would shake her belief in her path? Tension hung thick in the air as she turned to face him and asked, "Do you want to discuss further?" It felt both like a challenge and an invitation, a test of her resolve rooted in a renewed sense of purpose. In this moment, she realized she was no longer just an advocate for her proposal. She was a champion for the integration of consciousness that encompassing both science and spirit. What awaited her in this confrontation? Would it further reinforce her direction or force her to reevaluate everything she'd worked for? One thing was certain: the dialogue was far from over, and the real battle was just beginning. Emily stood poised as John approached, a wall of skepticism that threatened to eclipse her hard-won momentum. She could feel the heat of the spotlight still fresh on her skin, a testament to her courage in sharing her ideas. The soft hum of conversation around them faded into a distant echo as John's expression shifted from neutrality to a calculated deliberation. "Emily," he began, his voice smooth but firm, "I admire your passion. But passion alone doesn't change paradigms. You're talking about integrating spirituality into clinical practice. How do we measure that? How do we implement it without compromising scientific integrity?" Each word felt like a challenge, aimed directly at the core of her proposal. She felt a familiar wave of self-doubt wash over her. Yet beneath it lay a deeper conviction, a newfound resilience that urged her forward. "John, I've come to believe that human stories, those nuanced experiences that defy quantification, hold immense value in understanding health," she replied, her voice steadying with each syllable. To discredit these experiences is to ignore a fundamental aspect of humanity. If we can create a framework where both data and individual experiences coexist, we have the potential to revolutionize patient care. Emily's heart raced as she spoke, the weight of her convictions igniting a determination within her. John's face remained inscrutable, but he leaned back slightly, a visual cue that he was mulling over her words. "You speak of revolutionizing care," he said, a tiny flicker of interest lighting his eyes. "But that's a grand assertion. What makes you think your model will resonate with or be accepted by the broader medical community?" A moment's silence lingered between them, filled with unspoken implications. Emily inhaled deeply, her thoughts racing. "Because, John, change often starts from the fringes. Those who challenge established norms become the catalyst for transformation. Isn't that what science is about? Evolution? My research isn't just about the data. It's about enhancing our understanding of the human condition." She felt liberated in articulating her beliefs, as if shedding layers of doubt. The internal battle had been fierce, but with John's inquiry, she began to unveil parts of herself she hadn't acknowledged before. Her ability to navigate resistance, her strategic thinking, and her capacity for perseverance. It felt like a revelation that in engaging these skeptics, she was fortifying her own mission. That's a compelling perspective, John conceded, his tone softening marginally. "But your path is riddled with challenges. How will you ensure that spirituality doesn't overshadow evidence in clinical practices?" Emily recognized the skepticism as an opportunity rather than a barrier. It's about the balance. One does not negate the other. By using a mixed methods approach, we can collect qualitative data alongside quantitative, creating a robust understanding of patient outcomes. It's a pilot program that requires collaboration and openness to experimentation. As she spoke, she could feel the once ominous weight of her proposal lifting. Each word fortified her resolve, drawing on the threads of her newfound identity as a pioneer, one who could deftly navigate the confluence of science and spiritual care. The conversation stretched into a dynamic exchange, Emily fielding questions with increasing confidence, her earlier insecurities fading into the background. She hadn't just defended her proposal. She crafted a dialogue that challenged John and even herself to reconsider what was possible within the realm of their profession. As they wrapped up, John offered an unexpected twist to challenge cloaked in admiration. "If you're serious about this, assemble a small group of researchers willing to explore your findings further. Let us see if we can gather some preliminary data." The exhilaration that swept through her was electric. This was not merely a concession, but a gateway, a chance to breathe life into her ideas. Emily nodded slowly, the gravity of the moment settling in. The groundwork for something profound was being laid. As they parted, Emily felt emboldened, a burgeoning sense of momentum pushing her forward. With John's challenge looming overhead, she realized that she would not only be advocating for her approach, but actively forging the path ahead. What steps would she need to take to cultivate her vision? Would she be able to rally the support necessary to manifest her ideas into reality? The answer was as uncertain as the journey ahead. Yet in that uncertainty lay the vital spark of possibility. The real test of her resolve had only just begun. Emily sat at her cluttered desk, her mind racing amidst a cacophony of ideas and potential strategies. The call to action from John replayed in her thoughts like a relentless drumbeat, urging her to assemble the right team to propel her vision forward. The initial thrill of the moment had dimmed, replaced by the stark realization that conviction alone would not translate her aspirations into reality. She needed a plan, an actionable strategy that would not just speak to her peers, but resonate deeply within the core of the medical community. Emily stared at the blank page in front of her, thoughts swirling like autumn leaves in a brisk wind. Who could she trust with her vision? Who shared her passion for integrating the often overlooked dimensions of humanity into healthcare? In the days that followed, Emily began to tap into her network of colleagues, identifying those who had shown openness to unconventional ideas or had expressed curiosity about holistic approaches. She drafted a concise proposal outlining the pilot program's objectives and methodologies, each word igniting a fire within her that had long been dormant. Among her first recruits was Sarah, a brilliant psychologist who often lamented the disconnect between emotional well-being and physical health. They had collaborated before, their conversations rich with speculation about enhancing patient care. But Emily needed more than just sympathetic ears. She required allies who could challenge her thinking and refine her approach. That IT was with that intention that she reached out to Daniel, a data analyst known for his rigorous methods and skepticism. He seemed like a candidate meant to stifle her enthusiasm rather than bolster it, but Emily welcomed the challenge. If her model could withstand Daniel's scrutiny, she would be one step closer to proving its validity. When she met them a week later in her small, sunlit office, there was a palpable tension in the air, thin and electric. Emily laid out her vision, her voice unsteady yet resolute. By weaving narratives and quantitative data together, we can create a holistic view of patient care. She began, her pulse quickening as she sensed their divided reactions. This sounds intriguing, but you'll need substantive metrics to assess spirituality's impact, Daniel interjected, arms crossed, his expression skeptical yet curious. How do you plan to measure something so subjective? Through established psychological frameworks, Emily replied, adopting a calculated calm. We can start with validated questionnaires that gauge individual beliefs and values and correlate these variables with outcomes. I believe there are patterns that will emerge if we look closely enough. Sarah's eyes sparkled. We can also incorporate case studies. Personal narratives have a unique way of uncovering insights that pure data may overlook. Their voices intertwined in a lively discussion. And for the first time, Emily felt the tangible possibility of her concept solidifying into something real. Yet, the excitement was laced with uncertainty. Each argument clarified her stance, but with every question raised, seedling doubts crept in. What if they couldn't quantify spirituality without distorting its essence? Would the mere act of measuring its effects betray the very nature of what she sought to understand? As the hours ebbed away, the questions they posed began to resonate within her. She realized that doubt didn't signify weakness. Rather, it was a compass guiding her exploration. This moment would require her to navigate uncharted waters, demanding her to embody the courage she had so fervently advocated. When the meeting concluded, a sense of accomplishment washed over her. Ideas had been forged, challenges articulated. Emily felt she was laying the foundation for something significant. Yet, she also sensed a lurking anxiety. This venture was ambitious, and the stakes were higher than ever. She was no longer merely a student of the implications of spirituality in medicine. She was its nascent champion. As Emily settled into her evening routine, her thoughts drifted to how she would address the inevitable pushback. The medical community was notorious for its resistance to untraditional methods, and she realized that the path ahead would demand unwavering perseverance. What strategies would bridge the gap between innovation and acceptance? Would she manage to secure the support she needed to move forward, or would her dreams remain unfulfilled? These questions loomed over her, each one an invitation to delve deeper into her resolve. Determined to brace herself for the challenges lying ahead, she picked up her notebook, ready to draft the next steps in her journey. Unbeknownst to her, the conversation that awaited her with Daniel and Sarah next week would push her even further into the depths of her purpose, and there, hidden in the friction of ideas, lay the potential for profound transformation. Emily awoke the next morning, a sense of urgency buzzing beneath her skin. With each tick of the clock, she felt the weight of her aspirations more palpably, pressing against her chest as if daring her to act. She brewed a cup of coffee, its rich aroma swirling through the air, awakening her dormant resolve. Today would be pivotal. She felt it in her bones. After reviewing her notes from the meeting with Sarah and Daniel, She knew she needed an effective communication strategy, a way to sway skeptics and inspire her allies. Their discussions had unveiled crucial concerns, particularly Daniel's demand for evidence to validate her proposals. Without tangible data, her vision would remain just that, a vision, floating aimlessly without grounding. Driven by her determination, Emily decided to delve deeper into existing literature. Spending hours poring over studies and methodologies, she mapped out relevant psychological models that could support her initiative. The combination of qualitative and quantitative frameworks felt like the answer to her dilemma, a bridge over the chasm between data-driven analytics and the nuances of human spirituality. Later that day, she met with Daniel and Sarah in a dimly lit conference room, the air thick with anticipation. "Thank you both for being here," she began, her voice steadier than before. "I've taken your feedback seriously, and I believe I have a robust plan that aligns with both our goals and our skepticism." She launched into her revised proposal, detailing a multifaceted approach that integrated specific psychological assessments alongside case studies. The words flowed with newfound confidence, each point meticulously designed to address their concerns while beckoning them closer to her vision. Daniel listened intently. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, eyebrows furrowed as if parsing through her arguments. "This is an improvement, Emily, but I still worry about the operationalization of spirituality. How will you ensure consistency across different cultural interpretations?" That question spun through her mind, a pinball ricocheting against the walls of her budding initiative. She paused, reflecting on her own experiences with diverse belief systems and the rich tapestry of human spirituality she had encountered throughout her life. "I think we need to remain flexible. By allowing participants to define their spirituality within their cultural context, we actually enhance the reliability of our data. The more subjective the measure, the more precise its implementation can be," she proposed, her thoughts crystallizing in real time. Sarah nodded, her expression encouraging. "That makes sense. It could lead to a more nuanced understanding of how spirituality interacts with health outcomes." But Emily sensed a barrier. Daniel's skepticism ran deep, and she knew that while this was progress, doubt loomed larger than any of her incremental victories. What if, she continued, instead of trying to define spirituality strictly, we frame it as a spectrum, an evolving concept we explore rather than a fixed target? This could invite diverse perspectives while still grounding our research. She could see the gears turning in Daniel's mind. He contemplated her proposition, opening space for dialogue that felt both electric and vulnerable. "I think you're onto something," he finally conceded, his voice softer, more collaborative. Emily's heart soared with a mix of relief and exhilaration. Their synergy was beginning to coalesce, a vital heartbeat for her project. Yet, beneath that excitement lingered an ever-present anxiety. Would their collaboration ultimately be enough to combat the entrenched skepticism awaiting them in the medical community? As they dissected her proposal further, answering each of their inquiries with thoughtful precision, she began to realize the depth of her personal growth. No longer just an aspiring champion for an untested idea, Emily was transforming into an advocate fortified by knowledge and resilience. Later, as the discussion waned, Daniel said, "I think we're at the cusp of something powerful here, Emily. But our next step is crucial. We'll need to present this to the hospital board soon." Those words struck her like a bolt of lightning. She was no longer just an architect crafting blueprints in solitude. Now, she faced the daunting reality of standing before a panel that may not share her understanding or enthusiasm. The moment of truth loomed ahead, and the stakes felt dangerously high. Could she, in her fledgling idea, endure the scrutiny? Determined to prepare for what awaited, Emily wrapped up their meeting, her mind whirling. She resolved to anticipate every conceivable challenge and to reinforce her proposal with the insights they had discussed. She looked out the window at the dusky horizon. She pondered how to maintain her balance while resonating conviction. The very essence of her journey was about to be tested in a way she could not yet fathom. But what she didn't know was that the succeeding days would not only challenge her intellect, but also reveal a hidden resilience she'd never acknowledged in herself. Would she rise to the occasion, or would her vision crumble under the scrutiny of the established order? Emily stepped into the conference room, heart pounding and palms sweating as she prepared to present her proposal to the hospital board. The atmosphere buzzed with unspoken anticipation, colleagues seated with expectation. Today was not merely about data, but about embodying the journey of reconciling faith with science, a pivotal moment, not just for her research, but for her identity. As she began, her voice resonated with clarity and certainty. Thank you for being here today. I'm excited to present the integration of spirituality and health outcomes through my interdisciplinary research proposal. The board's expressions revealed a mixture of intrigue and skepticism, their eyes darting like a pendulum between curiosity and doubt. Emily expertly wove together data and the human experiences she'd gathered, illuminating how spiritual health affected recovery rates. She spoke of her newfound approach, emphasizing a flexible framework that considered individual definitions of spirituality within a research context. The tension in the room thickened as she reached the crux of her findings. One board member, Dr. Simmons, interjected, his skepticism cracking the already fragile atmosphere. But how can we trust findings rooted in subjective experiences? Science demands objectivity. Fueled by her past confrontations, Emily held her ground. Dr. Simmons, is it not the individual stories that drive our practice? Each patient's experience enriches our understanding of healing beyond what is quantifiable. In the world of health, we must embrace the narrative that runs alongside the data. The room fell silent, the collective gasp of recognition caught in their throats. Unbeknownst to her, she had cultivated not just her proposal, but an undeniable embodiment of transformation within herself. Every challenge she faced had shaped her. She was no longer the rigid scientist hiding behind statistics, but a defiant advocate for those untold narratives, the very essence of her purpose. As conversations progressed, she noticed nodding heads among some board members. Curiosity had begun to replace skepticism. Emily took a deep breath, summoning the fortitude that flashed within her. Moving forward, I intend to gather both quantitative data from methods and personal testimonies. This dual approach can give us a profound understanding of healing that couples empirical research with human experience. Finally, the pivotal moment arrived. Emily presented the project timeline, meticulously detailed methodologies, and anticipated outcomes. She had built a robust plan. As she concluded, applause erupted, an unfiltered admission of acknowledgement and anticipation. Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her. Her journey from skepticism to reconciliation had solidified in their minds in just those few moments. But there was still one more thread to pull: the fear of her colleague's judgment. When the applause settled, the board began discussing logistics, approval protocols, and methodologies with excitement swirling around her. But her mind was drawn to John. Returning to a road she traversed with care. Would he validate this new stage of her work, or dismiss it as folly? Gathering her courage, Emily approached him once more. "Thank you for your persistence, John," she said, voice steadying. "I needed that challenge. It not only helped refine my proposal, but it also illuminated parts of my passion I hadn't fully embraced before." His expression softened, a budding respect crossing his features. "Emily, I admire your ability to connect on such a profound level. Just remember, it's only the beginning. The evidence will need to speak louder than intentions as we move forward." She returned his gaze, the weight of validation sinking in. He saw her growth. She was not merely a researcher any longer, but a pioneer at the nexus of science and spirituality. The sting of past skepticism no longer gnawed at her resolve, because she was beginning to understand that true achievement transcended clinical findings. She had ventured beyond her comfort zone and found the courage to embrace her complex identity. Days turned into weeks as her proposal gained momentum. Collaboration flourished, and publication opportunities opened. Each step illuminated the transformative journey she had undertaken. Emily had successfully proven that blending her personal beliefs with her scientific endeavors was not just possible, but essential. The support she garnered from colleagues and the board infused her with unparalleled confidence. As she delivered a keynote speech at a national conference, she felt the depth of pride swell within her. This journey has taught me that healing isn't solely a matter of science. It's about a human connection, a spiritual thread that weaves through our lives. The audience erupted into enthusiastic applause, mirroring the evolution of her spirit. Each moment reinforced her purpose, a profound intersection realized between faith and science. Emily Carter stood fully transformed, not as an isolated physicist, but as an empowered advocate for a holistic understanding of health. This capstone moment resonated with triumph, validating not only her professional aspirations, but sculpting her deeply personal narrative. Now, as you reflect on this powerful transformation, you need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that reflect on human resilience. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and let these stories reach those who need them most. Comment below your reactions and theories about Emily's journey, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through their actions.